Hello and welcome to this Excel tutorial. Apologies if I sound a bit hoarse today. I haven't been that well overnight, but regardless, I'm going to teach you how to do these pivot tables. So, pivot table is a great way of sorting out information, large amounts of information very quickly in the way you want it to be sorted. It's a very powerful tool. It does use up a lot of memory in Excel. However, it's easily manipulated, and from that, it allows you to draw all sorts of conclusions. So, I missed the title. Let's just make sure that you know what this is. So, here we have the data. So this is the data we're going to use. It is about, I'm just taking a random example of houses, and we've got, so I've chosen 20 houses on a global scale. I have them by country, cost of living, moving costs, all from my current perspective, which is where I live in London, and I rank them where I would like to live, from 1 being the highest and 20 being the lowest. So let's create the pivot table. So what you do first thing is you select the data you want, click Insert Pivot Table. See here, this small window will appear. It will have your selection in the table and range column. You can use an external data source, but be careful because web pages can change, tables can change from whoever has that data source, whoever owns that data source. So I wouldn't use that. I would just copy and paste that data into an Excel sheet and look up the pivot table from there. So you can choose where you want it when you want it on a new worksheet. So if you click OK, a new sheet will appear with the pivot table on the left. Or you have an existing one, which is what I want, and it will just appear where you select it. So let's go back up to the range, select that again. Existing location, like that. See, now the pivot table will start. The top left corner of the pivot table will be in that cell. So click OK. And now you can see this window appears to the right. I can't zoom in. So then you can click any of these boxes and that data will appear in the pivot table. So you notice I clicked out on the pivot table here and that box disappeared, but the moment you click into it, it will appear again. So I am looking for, let's say, the country this time, and I'm going to, what I want, its rank. So this will be the total rank of, so what this is doing, it is adding up all of Australia. So Australia. So you see 11 and 4, it's 15. But that's not what I want. I want it to count how many there are. So, as you notice, we go down here where it says values. You click on here, click on value field settings, change the sum, so that will now read count of to count. So now you can see there's 2 Australia's, 2 China's, and that, a good check is the grand total should equal the total of the count of this. So what I haven't described is this box down here, and what is that? Well, that is where, instead of dragging this data, instead of just clicking the boxes, you can drag down. So you could have rows as that, and you could have, let's do exactly the same thing. Nope, you want this one here. And you want to get, see, I made a mistake there, but in order to get rid of the mistake, you just drag that up, and it's gone. We want to change that back to count. You can also unclick the arrow to get rid of it, like I did earlier. But let's say I want a filter now, and I want the filter to be the moving costs. So therefore I drag this down, and the filter will appear here at the top. So let's just make it look a bit neater. We don't want it at the same level as the title. So let's get back in, get that menu bar appearing. So now I want to filter it on the medium costs. You can also select multiple items if you want, but I just want to select medium. So there we go, it's filtered out. It's got moving costs, it's got the country by the count of the rank. So basically, if it's in that country, how many countries there are in there. And I filtered on only the mediums of the moving costs are being shown. So it's a very powerful function, very useful. But let's say I wanted to add an extra metric. So let's just say number of, let's say I've already had 20 houses here and I've already looked at them. So let's say I now know the number of bedrooms. I mean, you can add it here or you can add it here. It doesn't really make a difference in pivot tables, because what I'm going to do to update it is going to be exactly the same. So let's just put it here for completeness, I guess. So let's say number of bedrooms is 2, 3, 4, 3. We're not going to have a 1 bedroom one, nor a 23 one. So these are definitely very random numbers, but I just want to get the idea across. So here, now I've told you about this that appears when you click on a pivot table, but also you may have noticed that this appears at the top. You have Analyze and Design. So you can change the design of the pivot table if you want. See that that is all changing colour. I like blue. And then we can also, I'll come back to this in a moment. So Analyze. So we've added number of bedrooms. So how do we get that included into our data? Quite simply, we just go to Change Data Source, click Change Data. Notice that a selection will appear along with this, and you simply can just move that along 1. So now when you click on Change Data Source again, you'll have the whole selection being chosen. Let's say we now wanted to include that. So let's put that into our values. So now we see there's a sum again, but do I want that? Yeah, let's leave it like that. Or we could have it as columns. So now you can see of those two, one has 2 bedrooms, one has 3 bedrooms. And that's very neat. You can see if I wanted to live in Spain and I've checked out 2 houses, one has 4 bedrooms, one has 5 bedrooms. Must be a very nice house. So that's very useful. So let's say I wanted to change some of these. So let's say that Dublin, I don't want to live there anymore. So let's just say that was Houston, and that is in the US. The cost of living, let's say medium, I've never been there, would like to, maybe live. Moving costs will be high because I'm in the UK, and that rank is now moved up to 17 because I would rather live there than anywhere else other than London in the UK, just for this purposes. But the data here has changed, but this hasn't changed. The pivot table has not changed. So, how do I change it? Very simply, I can right click, press refresh, and as you can see, it has updated with the information that is in the data source. You could also go refresh here. If you have more than one pivot table, then this refresh would only apply to this pivot table. If you did this refresh and refresh all, then it would refresh every pivot table. If I wanted to add another one on the end, let's say that is Canberra, which is in Australia. I have no idea cost of living. Let's say medium again. It's my default value. High because it's across the world. But that's number 21, and number of bedrooms is 3. So updating it again, exactly the same, change data source, except now we're going a row down. And then you'd have to refresh. But the moving costs are high, so it hasn't impacted this at all. This has been filtered beyond this scope. So nothing has changed. So let's get rid of the filter. Or let's just select all, basically. So, now, what if I only wanted a part of this pivot table? So click on there, click on Analyze, and we have to insert a slicer. A slicer is similar to a filter, except now you have more versatility in cutting your data, hence slicer. So you have to insert slicer. Let's have it on what we had here. So let's have something we haven't had, cost of living. Here we go. You see? Now this slicer relates to the pivot table, does not relate to the underlying data. So you have to be careful about that. So let's select, and now you've added extra functionality to your pivot table. And you can have multiple slices. To get rid of the filters in the slicer, press the X. So let's have another slicer. Let's have, what have we got here? Oh, we've got everyone. So let's have country again. And let's change this to, so you can set the depth, you can move this up again, and let's have location. So now we have all sorts of these here. Still, notice, still 21, and that's 21, so it's all reading exactly the data I want. So now we have country and cost of living, and we can literally have multiple slices. So we can have, let's say, Australia, and notice that's been grayed out because there's no low cost of living in Australia for me. And then let's say we want the mediums, let's say we want the highs. You see, and you can have multiple criteria if you hold down the control key. If you hold down the control key, click one, hold down the control key, click another, click another, click another, and then you will have multiple selected criteria. So, one thing I was about to leave off on. So I said I'd come back to this, and so I am. Right. So this changes the layouts you want. So in some cases, you repeat all item labels. In some cases, you'll have a value here. Oh, we can do that actually. Let's do that. So I've got two metrics in rows. So with this area on the bottom right, it's always filtered from the top down. So this, it's always sorted from the top down, I mean. So you'll have your location first and then the country. So this pivot table is grouping by location, but because that is a unique value in the table, everywhere has a location, pretty much a separate location, then you have 21 rows and it looks a bit messy. But if you move country up above location, then you have groupings by the country. And so when you have report layout and repeat items, sometimes you'll have groupings here, and then you'll have like a long list going down here. So what this repeat all item labels is going is that this will have say Canberra, Perth and Sydney were all down here. You would have Australia written down here, China written all the way down here, and so on. So it's repeating all the lines of information on every line. So let's do not show subtotals. Looks a bit neater there. Blank rows. So you separate out, try to make it look a bit more neater, a bit more sorted. You can outline. See, there we go. There's the separate values on each line going on in this bit. And you just have a play around. These are quite simple. You can turn all the grand totals off. I tend to leave them on for rows and columns. And pivot tables are really great. However, they do use up a lot of memory. So if you double click, that's one thing I didn't show you before. If you double click on a piece of information in the pivot table, a new sheet will appear containing that information. So if someone asks you, I want to know more about this 6 here, what are these 6? So you click on the 6 and all of those 6 will appear, and you can tell them, oh, those 6 are Berlin, California, London, Manchester, Paris and Shanghai. It will appear in a new sheet, and you'll notice that when you say delete, it'll probably delete the sheet, but the information will still be there in the pivot table because the pivot table relates to this. So this is relating to this, not this. So the order goes this, then rated to pivot table, which is reading from this. So if you delete this, nothing happens to the pivot table. Well, I hope you enjoyed that session. I hope it really got to grips about how pivot tables work and what they are and how they're used. Check out lots more of my YouTube videos on my channel, AnalystRising, for plenty more information. Thank you.